Hello, Mark. We've
Elmer,
always been conservative, and we're back again. It's good to be
always.
back.
Yes. Well, what makes us conservative, according to our particular judgment, is that we are very much inclined to preserving the Constitution, the rule of law, civil rights, human rights, women's rights, the environment, and all of the things that are important to living in a just, free, compassionate society.
With all experience I've had in my life, I have a great need to be conservative at this point. I want to hold on to what I got. I don't want to lose anything that I deserve at this point. What I've been through, don't want to have to go through it again.
Well, I appreciate that you're saying what you're saying, because what you've been through and what I've been through living in the very same country is different. And it's different because you are darker complexion than I am. You have more melanin in your skin than I do. And your ancestors, many of them, if not the majority who live in the country now, were brought to the United States against their will.
It's 100% correct. And my having been born as many years before you were born, I experienced some things that
15 years.
15. I don't want to say that I don't want to think about them anymore because we can't forget our past, but they stand very deep and strong in my past, and
Yeah.
I don't want to go back that way.
I imagine that not having lived through the same kinds of effects, my early years in life were all lived about 50 miles east of San Francisco in Napa, California. And the first time I saw a black person, I was a young child in a stroller, and my grandmother was wheeling me around the department store at Elmer. And I said, "Look, Grandma, there's a black man." Because
Probably heard about it on TV or radio.
we didn't have a TV. We only had a radio. So I had never seen any black people because no black people lived in my town that I knew. Obviously there was one man there, and theoretically he lived in town, and, but I'll never know. I never met that man as I grew up that I know of.
It was a great beginning for you. Your mother began to teach you about humanity at that time.
Yeah. Well, it's actually my grandmother that was strolling me around. My mother was actually at work. And I'm guessing right at that point in time, her job was at the Napa State Hospital, known as IMOLA, which is kind of an aside point. Well, we could talk about that sometime in the future, but I remember when my sister and I were kids, and our parents took us to the Oakland bus terminal, the Greyhound bus depot.
They were popular back then.
And they put us, my sister, a 14-year-old girl, myself, an 11-year-old boy, on a bus from Oakland to Washington, D.C. We rode the bus all the way across the country for 3 days and 4 nights, and it was quite an experience, you know. And actually, Elmer, a point about race in America that stood out for me is that even though I didn't know any black people at all in my life, even as an 11-year-old, no black friends, no black acquaintances. I don't think I'd ever had a conversation with somebody who was black.
My experience was different from yours, although I grew up conservatively. We lived on a person's place who was white. Never forget him. His name was.
They owned your property where you lived. You rented the place.
They lived on the hill. We lived down the hill on their property, and his name was Willie Lampton, and he had a son and a daughter, and there were, I think, 5 in our family at that time.
You had 4 siblings?
I had 2 brothers and 3 sisters, so there were, I believe that's 6 total, but 5 siblings. And I was well acquainted with whites at that time. And I wasn't afraid of them.
Were both your parents alive?
Both of my parents were alive.
Did they live at home?
And they lived at home.
They were still married?
Right, and we lived on their place. And while we were living there for a year or so, we were getting ready to buy our place. So I came up around white people, but I wasn't afraid of them at the time. I have an interesting story sometime I'll tell you about living on the person's place that owned the place, and while we were trying to get our place, and our relationship, I think, was better or different from what it was in the 50s and 60s when desegregation came.
Right, because there wasn't desegregation when you were a kid, it was segregation proper.
And we went to our school, they went to their school. They wanted to play with us because there were more of us than there were of them.
Mhm.
And they would come around us, and we had better food. They thought that they wanted to eat where we ate.
They liked your food better.
They liked our food. They liked our games. They liked our toys, which were very few. We made our own toys. We made our own
Oh,
fun,
yeah.
the whole thing.
Your toys were probably more sturdily constructed.
Yeah, we created the hopscotch, as we call it.
Huh.
We had our own fun and played in the woods and in the field and grew up that way
Oh.
on their place until we got out.
Now, when you say on their place, were they landlords? Were they renting the property to you, or
we were landlords.
you were?
No, they were landlords. And
You were a tenant.
We were the tenants, and we were living on that place until we could buy our own place.
And when you say you buying your own place, you're talking about your
My
parents.
father, he bought a 60 and sold 20 and paid for the 40. And we stayed there 20 years.
What do you mean 60, 40
60 acres of land.
acres of land?
Yes, I believe he bought that 65th 3 times $680, and within months he sold 20 of it for $100. So he had money to build. He could cut the wood and the logs and the timber and the ceilings, the building material from his own place. Think about that. Bringing back so many memories because we had to cross the creek to get to our house. And
Oh,
I was
yeah.
4 years old, and I rode my sister's back across this creek as she walked across this log. And she was carrying me on her back and carrying the lunch for my dad and those volunteers who was helping him to build his house at that same time. And I'm just thinking about it this moment.
So your sister,
My sister was preteen, and she carried me on her back across the creek. I could walk, but she wouldn't trust me to walk on the log across the creek because that was on the pathway. And she had the lunch pail with the lunch in it from my father and all the volunteers
Wow.
in our place.
what do you think lunch was? Do you remember what was in there?
Well, usually what you had for breakfast back then, you also had for lunch if you worked what they call for the public, like at sawmill. If you had 12 or 14
Did you
biscuits.
say sawmill?
Yes, we had mills in the community that was owned by the mill owners, and what you had for breakfast, you may have for lunch. That was preserves of biscuits and butter and pork meat,
Yeah.
salt meat.
Was it? Yeah, it was salted, so
salted
it was like
over the years.
dried.
Dried, may have been cured goat because we did raise goats back then.
Oh, yeah.
And that stands out in my mind. And once we got in those woods on their own place, we stayed 20 years and never again were we out on anybody else's place.
Yeah. So you were born in 1937,
37.
8 years prior to the end of World War II. It was, I believe, December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Is that correct?
4 years, 37, 41.
Yeah. So you were born in 37. The war started 4 years later. You were a 4-year-old boy.
Close to that time.
Yeah. When's your birthday? What month?
April 14, 1937. I always refer to it as about 8:19 p.m.
Yeah.
It was just the time that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated many years before I was born. But
Yeah.
everybody who wants to know my date of birth, they got to hear the whole story. April 14, 1937, 8:19 p.m. at night, by a midwife. They got to hear the whole story.
You were delivered by a midwife,
I
as
was delivered
opposed
by
to.
a midwife, and it was on route 2, and that's the only information in my birth certificate.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for you and I, hopefully if you see it the same way, the reason that you and I can have this conversation is that I, 15 years later, was born in San Francisco,
West Coast.
in a hospital in San Francisco, even though my parents lived in Napa, California, so they had to commute 50 miles. Because my mother's doctor was located there, they had lived there previously, and my sister was born using the same doctor in the same hospital because we were both required to have a cesarean delivery. My mother was physiologically capable of giving full birth to kids, I guess. The doctors made that assessment anyway. And so we were both delivered as cesarean babies back in that I would say, a relatively primitive time, especially compared to modern technology now for medicine. And we both made it. My mother survived and raised us and lived to a nice, ripe 90 years old herself.
My mother died very young. In fact, I think she was a few days from being 35 in childbirth. But I was 4 years old. I had a younger brother who was 2 years old. She died in childbirth, and within 6 months, we had another mother. My dad married again and moved from the place that we had bought to he could get married. And once he got married, a couple of weeks, we moved back to our home place that we had bought just before my mother died.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a significant trauma for a 4-year-old toddler, you know, to have lost your mother. It's so hard to understand life and death at 4 years old, or even at 73 for myself. I think one of the reasons that I'm friends with you is that we have similar political leanings, both being
Definitely so.
what we call real conservatives, and we call the people that are generally referred to as conservatives more wanton wasters. They're the people who want to drill, baby, drill, and, you know, cut down all the trees and the hell with the environment, build. Instead of saying, wait a minute, folks, what about living in balance and harmony with nature? You know, the expanding population of humanity is an issue. And it's kind of an interesting perspective, because I would say that it seems to me that our powerful overlords, if you will, in the United States of America are essentially multi-billionaires. They're super rich. They control the technology. They control what we're talking about. They control what we think about. They
control the press.
They control all the language that we're using and the information that we're getting to a super high degree at a fine-grained level. And it's done often very subtly with algorithms and other ways in which they can control us with, you know, just, hey, here's something to buy, try this is great for you, or, you know, oh, I heard such and such wants to be your friend now, or, you know, all the things and the messages that come with that. They figured out how to keep our attention.
They do it.
And they use our attention against us to buy stuff that's worthless, to pursue things that don't give us any deep sense of meaning and belonging in a community together.
As a result of that, we're not as close together as we really would need to be as human beings, because of all the choices that we have, and the advancement in communication and transportation and the whole works.
Yeah.
It creates a situation where we are very far apart, although we may live next door to each other.
That's right.
So as being conservative, we need to think of what binds us together, especially when it comes to politics. And I've definitely got a history in that I always be proud of and always happy to share with others.
Well, I think your political history is very much a tale of an American experience, and specifically a Southern Arkansan black man's experience, having been raised here prior to the beginning of World War II, having lived through World War II, the Korean War, and then the Vietnam War, and then all of the Gulf Wars and things that we've had since then as a country.
My story is that I'm a retired elected official at this point in my life. I get to check on the first day of every month, and this will last as long as I live.
You still get it?
I still get it. And
is it a pension? Is it what is it?
It's I paid into my retirement, so
A retirement
pension, and I match what the city paid for me.
Yeah. So they had a program set up as you're being an employee of the city after being elected.
15 years, 5 months, 20 days, 30 minutes, I was elected official.
Anybody counting? Did you get that number?
It was probably a fast one that I enjoy telling.
You're gonna have to say it a little slower.
15 years, 5 months, 20 days, and 30 minutes. And the reason I remember so exactly was that the former government was changed at the time that I was not an alderman anymore. We went from alderman mayor to city board of directors and city manager.
I see. Yeah, so a different local government form.
That was the end of my political career as far as being elected and being salaried.
Yeah.
Of course, I did some more running after that. In fact, I had 5 more chances at local government.
Mm-hmm.
I ran for mayor 4 times, and I ran for, I believe it was Justice of the Peace once, and involved in a runoff, and I was also a candidate for, no, I was elected as Garland County Election Commission. Of course, I didn't stay there very long. That was the end of my career.
Oh, you were a local election commissioner for how long?
A year and a half, or almost 2, and when it was interfering with my ability to distribute the literature of my books, as you see on my cap, I'm a poet. If anything gets in the way of that, I'll leave it, because I have to do poetry until I die. I'll be writing always.
Yeah.
Which is related to the careers that I've had in education and in politics and family and friends.
Yeah.
Associated with you, and being a conservative and being open-minded. I write about that.
I love the fact that we are unabashedly, unashamedly declaring ourselves to be conservatives.
We are.
The real, true conservatives. And, you know, in the process of taking back that language, I think what we're hoping is that it inspires people to think about how they use language and how it affects their own thinking. You know, we're really big champions of critical thinking.
We are.
Which means that, you know, you say, well, I believe and think this. Why? Why do I think and believe this? Where did the beliefs that I have come from? Who sponsored them? Who paid for them? Why have I been exposed to so many repeated commercials about how to think? And even what to buy and what to wear, or how to live, what car to drive, you know. All the things that we think we know, but we may not really know why we're doing what we're doing.
Mark and I want to have these choices of things that we want to think about and things that we don't want it to be drafted or prevented from doing the things that we feel that we have earned the right to do. So we are conservative in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I'm thinking about that I would like to directly share with our audience is how much my conversation with Elmer seems so fluid and natural, even given the disparity of our personal origins and our history and the things that we were subjected to growing up in the country. How it was for me really truly experiencing the privileges of being white. I truly am aware that I have white privilege. And a lot of people are saying, well, what does that mean? I'm a white person. What are you talking about? I don't feel it or see that. And I told Elmer a couple of stories. Once my friends and I were driving down the street with open containers of beer at 17 years old. I'm not advocating that anyone else do that, by the way. But, you know, we made that bad judgment and that mistake, and we were pulled over. And the cop said, oh, I see, you guys get out of the car, and they said, oh, I see you got some open containers. Okay, go pour those out. And he goes, you got any more beer? I go, well, yeah, it's in the trunk. And he says, okay, pour the beer out. Change drivers, and go home. And he let us go. Now, I know that if Elmer was out with his 17-year-old friends doing the exact same behavior where he lived in Arkansas, the outcome would have been dramatically different. What do you say, Elmer? Do you want to
I definitely
clue our audience in?
Yes, I definitely know that the results would have been different. My parents would have been called, my teacher would have been called, the pastor of the church would have been called, and it would have been so embarrassing that I would have never wanted to be with that same person again. Now, when we talk about white privilege, I have some literature on hand, and we are going to share more about this at some point or another. And I'm reading and studying about the white privilege that you have and the privilege that I don't have because I'm black. One of the things that we can do to erase this great distance between you and me is to tell the truth about it from the beginning.
Yeah.
You had white privilege, I didn't. It existed. The least thing we can do is to talk about it and hope that we can decrease it in the future by just being honest and comfortable with the story.
Yeah. See, and to me, I don't know. I don't quite understand why people who a lot of people who look like me are terrified of people that look like you.
And that,
And I imagine it goes both ways,
it
right?
goes both ways.
Yeah. People that look like you are often afraid of people who look like me.
And I've said
Is
as
that-
much in my writing, you ought to be very proud of me. I'm part of the foundation of this country to the extent that I helped to build it. My ancestors did. If this country is great, let's say that it is, it's great on the label that my ancestors put forth from 1619 up to 1863, 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation. America owes us up to this point, whether they ever admit to it and pays us or not.
Yeah. So Elmer, I happen to agree with Elmer on this particular point, because in looking back historically at the records, it has been determined by people who have done the data research and the accounting. And I know, research and facts are not real popular in certain circles. I think, let's say Fox News, for example, not really big on facts, a lot more interested in telling the narrative that the administration, Donald Trump and all of his sycophants want to promote. But we are very much interested in information. And the fact is, and this we were looking at an interview with Doc Rivers with Nicole Wallace yesterday. And the interview was from a few days prior. And he was referring to the fact that the value of the slaves in the country prior to the Civil War was collectively all the people that were owned because they were black-skinned and had been imported into the United States to serve as property for the white people.
Equivalent to a mule, dog, cow, land, or anything.
Oh, in terms of how they were valued and how they were treated and how they were exchanged.
Part of the capitalistic system.
Yeah. Now we buy and sell tractors, and in those days they bought and sold people. And that's a fact. We need to look at it. We need to take ownership of that as a country. We need to acknowledge it and be honest with ourselves. Now, I personally can't imagine that I ever would wanted to have a human being as a piece of my property. But other people were very comfortable with it. Our founding fathers, most of them were also slave owners. And what Doc Rivers was pointing out is that the value of those people was greater than the railroad, all the railroads, all the banks, and all of the, I forget, there was one other institution that
the land itself. You don't need
The
land
people-
if you have people.
the people that built this country with their blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of tears, were worth more economically than the institutions that were financing, transporting, etc., and the land that they were on, because they provided so much value. They built the capital of the United States, for example.
That is correct.
And Doc Rivers talked about running a 100-yard dash with everybody starting at the starting line at 0. But if you think about the advantage that I have, which there's no document or set of information that told me, hey dude, you're white, so therefore you are 2.5 times worth as much as a black person, or 3 times, or whatever the ratios are now. But I'm so much more likely to have assets and a profitable circumstance because our people were never banned from owning property. Wouldn't you say that was one of the primary elements?
That is correct. You could own as much property as you could walk off. We call it homesteading. Then I worked on your property to help you develop it. That's how you got the head start above me, or in front of me, on me from the beginning. And it's a very important.
And when I was employed, I got paid.
You did.
Or I mean, somebody that looked like me 150 years ago got paid for working, and people who look like you did not get paid.
I just got my food and a place to sleep and get up, go back to work the next day.
Yeah, hopefully you got food and you got enough.
Had 2 outfits per year, one in the summer and one in the winter. And I may or may not have worn shoes.
Yeah. Right. Shoes were extremely
One
expensive.
of the stories we used to tell about black people growing up, the bosses and the horses wore the shoes and we did the work. And went barefooted. My dad told me the stories about when he was growing up. You may have had a shoe that would fit either foot. There was no left and right at that time.
Mm.
We've come a long ways over the years.
A lot cheaper to make shoes that were all exactly
Kind of like a
symmetrical.
sock, you just put
Yeah,
it
just
on
one pattern, cut them both the same, sew them up, put one on the left or right, didn't matter.
Just kept going.
Yeah, if you were fortunate enough to have something to cover your feet to protect you from the sharp sticks and rocks out in the field or whatever, you know.
So it's important, Mark, that you and I tell these stories as we want to conserve our history and leave something for those who are listening and following us in the future.
Yeah.
You're white, I'm black. We have to admit our shortcomings in the past as results of our system and be comfortable with these stories that we're telling. And that's measurable progress, and we want our listeners to know that.
Yeah.
As we continue our podcasting business.
So here we are, lamentably, having achieved the Civil Rights Act in 1968, is that correct?
64 and 65.
Yeah, 64,
yeah.
Lyndon Baines Johnson at the under pressure from Martin Luther King and the movement of people, a lot of white people engaging with black people to recognize and establish the fact that this is America, and it does. We've always pointed to the notion we the people. It doesn't say we the Caucasian, Aryan race, whatever. It just says we the people. Maybe a lot of folks that look like me say, "Oh, geez, we sure made a big mistake," but most of us are saying, "No, that was great language. We love it. We're happy to be we the people," and the value that I get from being a friend with Elmer is that I know so much more about the actual experience that he had, which is dramatically different than the one that I had. And so I'm learning, I'm becoming more well-informed, and I'm also appreciating Elmer's courage and his wisdom and his strength to just carry forward and still be compassionate and loving, and he doesn't hate me just because I'm white. I think that's cool.
Not jealous or don't have an evil spirit towards you or anything of that nature. Mark, we're going to be able to continue this when we come back on again, and we're going to be talking about white privilege with a specialist that we have coming in. You want to mention?
Oh, very important, yes, for you coming up in our, maybe not next episode, but a very recent...
very soon, within a week of our recording.
We are going to be recording on Independence Day, the 4th of July, when the Declaration of Independence was distributed to the population and signed by all the people that were involved in the 13 original colonies declaring their independence from Great Britain. And we're going to be recording with Cassidy Kendall, who's written some interesting books about local politics and Hot Springs, Arkansas.
We look forward to that, and she's a person that will be very honest about white privilege. So we want those who are listening and watching us now to stay tuned with us. When we come back, we have more information on this matter.
Yeah, we're going to be privileged to have her on the 4th, so you'll be seeing that episode being posted up probably on the 5th or the 6th, because we have to
we look forward
hand over everything to our editor for publication. So we want to wrap it up for today?
We're going to wrap it up. I enjoyed it.
Thank you,
I
man.
appreciate it.